Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas.
Hello, dear listeners. This is Brett. Welcome back to the Online Great Books podcast. At the very beginning of today's conversation, you're going to hear Scott and Karl setting up what seems like it's going to be an underwhelming discussion of Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. But that never happens. Instead, Scott and Karl engage in what I think, I've told you before about my expert opinion, what I think is one of the most thought-provoking and important discussions of the Online Great Books Seminar that I have ever heard on the Online Great Books podcast. So whether you're already involved in seminar, you're thinking about getting involved in seminar, or you've never even considered it, you are going to benefit, I believe, from this very worth your while intermission in the Online Great Books conversation. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Stay tuned next week for Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie.
I'm Scott Hambrick.
I'm Karl Shute.
And today on the Online Great Books podcast, we are going to stumble our way through a show on Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. Karl and I both read this. We got too far ahead in our reading. And we finished this book, I don't know, probably 3 weeks ago. So our discussion is past its best if consumed by date.
I remember there's a book called Murder on the Orient Express.
Yes.
And some stuff happens in it. And I remember who the murderer is.
You do?
Yeah.
All right. I've forgotten. No, I haven't forgotten. But I had read this book a long, long time ago. I was probably in junior high, and I hadn't read it since. I also watched the Peter Ustinov movie by the same name around that same time, probably. Forgot everything about it.
Well, it's good when you can do that for a mystery so you can reread it. I can reread Dorothy Sayers' mysteries, and I can't remember who did it.
So, listener, you need to go to onlinegreatbooks.com, get on our mailing list. In preparation for the great cancellation, you need to be on our mailing list so we can email you. Go follow the Music and Ideas podcast. That one's a good one. This show has a much larger listenership than the Music and Ideas show. But we talk about music in much the same way. It's Karl, me, and Trent, producer Trent. You guys know him from, he used to do this show, produce this, or actually engineer this show and the Barbell Logic show, and he's a member of Online Great Books and a super smart guy. And I think he adds to the show. I don't think he makes it worse. I think he makes it better.
Of that show?
Yeah.
Yeah, except he's always playing his guitar.
Well, guitar players can't help but do that.
He's got to have it in his hands.
They're a real pain in the ass, guitar players. But yeah, he's in there, and it helps make that show a whole lot better. So if you like this show, go listen to that one. You'll hear us talk about stuff like Pink Floyd and Depeche Mode and Beethoven and outlaw country and Jimmie Rodgers and Miles Davis and Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. What else have we done?
We've done Beethoven a few times.
Yeah,
we did Bach a long time ago.
Louis Armstrong.
You, dear listener, have at this time basically all the music in the world at your disposal.
It's true.
Who knows what it'll be in a month. Through streaming. What are you doing with it? So you may, and you have pretty good sound quality, is pretty easy to get. Well, what are you going to listen to? Well, we've got some ideas.
Yeah. For crying out loud, we listened to Depeche Mode's Violator. You know?
It's not that bad, Scott.
I didn't say it's bad, but it just shows the range, Karl. The range. You go outlaw country, then Violator. Like, if that doesn't give you whiplash. You know, since we're going to limp through Agatha Christie here, I thought it might be interesting. Actually, it won't be interesting, but I don't care. It's our show. I just dropped a copy of our handbook, Karl, in the chat as a PDF. I thought we might talk a little bit about our seminar standards of conduct that you wrote.
Sure.
Would you be willing to do that?
Well, I think the rules are probably relevant. I've been thinking about them a bit.
They're important to me.
We try to keep politics out. We try to keep politics out of our discussions. And I think it's the most brilliant thing I ever did was to do that. I think it's...
one of your kids is the most brilliant thing you've ever created.
Well, that wasn't a work of intellect, though.
Oh, okay. Before we do that, can I do a little background? I said, hey, Coach Karl, shoot. I hear you like books. I do too. I've got this idea about this online book thing I'd like to do. And I explained it to you. And you said, on the internet? And I said, yeah, on the internet. And you said, or maybe I said, somehow it came out. We're like, the internet's terrible. And I think that you said we would have to do something to make sure it didn't turn into YouTube comments. I think is what you said. Because we were worried about that. And I said, well, the only thing I know to write is just don't be an asshole. And you said that won't be good enough. And I said, well, would you please write some standards of conduct for seminars? So Karl did. I mean, we were really worried that it would be the darned like the rest of the internet. And it hasn't been.
Mm-hmm.
And Karl, I don't think I've told you this, but I tell people in orientation at Online Great Books, so if you join, you'll just hear me say this again, that these standards of conduct have now become concerning to new members. Like they get our handbook and they see these standards of conduct and they're like, oh no, they must need these. You know what I'm saying? They're like, oh gosh, this exists. Yeah. They must have needed these. And our seminars have actually been wonderful. There's only one of these standards that we've ever had to really do anything about, and only slightly, and we'll get to that. But that's where these came from. And so now in seminar, in orientations, and when I talk to new customers, I have to tell them, hey, listen, we've got these, but I don't want it to spook you. We've never needed it.
Well, we've never needed it because we've had it, I think. You know what the internet is like, dear listener. You know that if you express an opinion about current events, about things that are happening out there, that you risk cancellation. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum. You're not far enough on the winning side to avoid cancellation. So we want to avoid that sort of anger where people see what somebody else says and say, aha, you are, and then they label you some kind of bad thing. And then it breaks into factions, and it's not a good conversation anymore. And it could be destructive to the whole enterprise.
Right.
So my rule, what I said is, no, we only talk about dead politicians. Okay? So if you have a point that you think you need to make from Aristotle about current events, don't do it about current events. Do it about Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah.
Because he's safely dead, and there are no Woodrow Wilson partisans anymore.
Au contraire. I have strong feelings about that guy.
Well, less so than Hillary or Donald or Joe or Kamala or whoever's.
They're all his fault.
So we want to keep it about dead politicians. Look, we're all on teams. Everybody's got a political... Nowadays, it's very hard not to be on a team. Emerson says something about, I hear your words, I know your tribe.
Right.
You know, so we say what our tribe says. Well, that's not what's supposed to happen in a seminar. The seminar is an encounter between you and the ideas and sharing it with other people to try to get at them. It's not, let me tell you what I think, which isn't really what you think. Let me tell you what my identity group utters.
Mm.
And I would rather not have that happen. And I think keeping the politics out, for the most part, is very helpful to do that. And in fact, if I'm in a seminar, I'm much more interested in what you think than what your, I don't know, whatever identity group you're in says. That's not interesting. I can hear that any place. So I think it's done pretty well. So we say politics is not off limits, but keep it polite. We prefer only to talk about dead politicians. If you want to compare something to Hillary or Donald, may I suggest Queen Victoria and Bismarck instead? Where we go is up to you. You're all very intelligent and experienced people in whose company we are honored to be, and you have interesting things to say about life, the universe, and everything. It's a Douglas Adams shout-out. We look forward to learning with you. We're not teaching you. You're not teaching us. We're learning with you.
You know, when people quit our program, we ask them to fill out a 1-question survey. And I don't remember what the question is. It's something like, what could we do better, or something like that, you know. Most of the time we get comments like, you're doing great, life caught up with me and I have to stop for a while. But I think the main comment that isn't that, the main complaint about our program that isn't that is, my seminar host wasn't knowledgeable, didn't give us context for the text. And those people are in the wrong place, because we don't teach. You said learning with you. We don't teach. The seminar hosts don't hold forth on the thing. They're supposed to ask questions, investigate with you, do shared inquiry. There is no lecture. There are no notes. There is no agenda. There is no whatever. And that doing it with you thing is really important. And most of the people that leave dissatisfied, and there really aren't a lot, that's their dissatisfaction. And I tell them, oh, well, you signed up for the wrong thing. You know, they got the great courses deal. You can download that and listen to it. That's cool. But we don't do that.
Okay, so this gets back to Socrates, as everything does. Tell me, Socrates, can virtue be taught? Well, okay, what is teaching? Can anything be taught? And we get in that dialogue an example of the boy being taught geometry, but he's not taught geometry. He comes up with it himself and is able to recognize the truth of what he figures out. I think you said this on that other podcast. You don't think anybody can teach.
Yeah, I say people cannot be taught. They only learn.
Yeah, you may learn something, and I might be near you when that happens. But I didn't teach it to you. I said words that caused you to think and to come up with the truth. That's different than getting a fact. Okay, maybe I could teach you the population of Cook County, Illinois. I could look it up and tell you the number. I guess that's teaching.
Maybe, I don't know.
But I can't teach you what the first principles are of moral thinking. You could memorize them, but you need to grasp them on your own, or they're not principles of moral thinking.
Yeah, Adler says that we learn by a process of discovery. A teacher doesn't really teach. What they're doing is participating in aided discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's right. So we try to do that. You know, when people want it to be spoon-fed to them or put on in an outline and projected on the wall or whatever, that we don't do it, and then they're irritated. And, yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah, so the seminar is supposed to be a place where this kind of thing can happen. So friendship, it needs friendship. So I'm just going to read what I think I wrote. Not sure if you wrote it or I wrote it. Dialectic requires goodwill from all participants. The goal is truth, but the means is the discussion. We attack ideas, not persons. So you might attack something, but it's going to be an idea, not the person next to you or the person in the chat that said it.
Yeah. In the seminar isn't this podcast or the other podcast or my Instagram account. It's the seminar. And you know what? The seminar isn't our Slack at Online Great Books either. Everything that we do is more vituperative than the seminar is.
That's true. That's true. And I'm pretty tame on these podcasts. But even so, you can say whatever you want in a seminar. You can run anything up the flagpole and see if it can withstand the light of day. So that gets to the second thing that I wrote. A seminar is a safe place for unsafe ideas. If it makes you uncomfortable, it's probably something you ought to talk about. So if you're reading Aristotle, for example, and he starts talking about natural slavery and you're freaking out about that, probably ought to talk about it. It's an important idea. You know, or you're reading The Republic and you don't like what he says about common property and all of that. That's what you talk about. There's no ideas that you dare not say. Because how are you going to know if something's right or wrong if you can only say certain things? So that's important. But the next one is related to that. So no living politicians. Because if we attach ideas to people, you start talking about whoever's running for office in this upcoming election. I'm not sure I'm going to pay attention, but you start talking about them instead of talking about the ideas. Well, people have opinions about them and they're on their team and they're either, they're red or blue or whatever. So what I wrote is this. So politics can cause people to hate each other. Please talk about ideas, not about politicians. If you must, make sure that the politicians mentioned are dead. I might talk about Lincoln or Ulysses Grant, or I might talk about Woodrow Wilson or Calvin Coolidge. That's probably pretty safe if I have to.
Unless I'm there.
Unless Scott is there.
That's really the only rule that we've ever had to say and even mention in a seminar. Somebody will say something about Angela Merkel, like, hey, and they're like, oh, Bismarck. It's not been a big deal. Of these rules, these are really the only ones that we've had to do that's really the only one we've had to do anything about, I think.
But I can see what can happen because I've had it in classrooms. If we didn't have this sort of rule, then you have somebody in the class or somebody in the seminar who will start using it as a platform. Yeah. This just goes to show what I saw on MSNBC last night. No. Turn your dial, go 100 years in the past. Don't talk about MSNBC.
MSNBC is not Lindy, bro.
I don't know what Lindy means.
Oh, you've heard of the Lindy effect.
What is the Lindy effect? There's so many effects.
It says something like, the older something is, the more likely it is to get older.
Okay.
So old ideas are more likely, like the Pythagorean theorem, are likely to get a whole lot older. A Ming vase is going to last longer than the Coca-Cola can you just drained. So it goes for ideas, objects of utility, so on.
We say no discussion of current events. Current events are divisive, and they kind of just are by nature.
They're also really boring.
They are.
They really are. My home book group, while it's not an echo chamber, we mostly are outraged by the same things. we might.
What better basis for friendship than
right.
that?
We certainly don't agree with how to fix those things, but we're mostly like-minded people, and we don't have a lot of arguments about politics. But if you allow discussion of current events or living politicians into the seminar, that just ends up being the only thing it's about, even if it's not divisive and even if it doesn't cause you to hate each other. It just hijacks the damn thing. It's supposed to be about the text and the ideas in the text and your reaction to those.
Yeah, so Aristotle becomes a tool for you to understand Zuckerberg or something rather than a tool for you to understand Aristotle and maybe yourself and capital T truth.
Uh-oh.
Which is kind of a prerequisite.
We need to add that in here. That's one of the things I want to talk about, Karl.
Yeah.
Your first sentence in this, I'm pretty sure that everything on page 21 you wrote. I don't think I changed anything. We could go back and look in our notes. I need to attribute this to you. In case somebody hates it, I can throw you under the bus. Now, you said friendship. Dialectic requires goodwill from all participants. The goal is truth, but the means is the discussion. We attack ideas, not persons. Dialectic requires goodwill from all participants. Dialectic, check my math here, Karl. Dialectic is a method that Socrates taught us about, and we've learned more about it since Socrates, that is used to check truth claims. So we've got all kinds of ways to check truth claims. Like you can make a syllogism. All men are mortals. Karl is a man, therefore Karl is a mortal. It's a deadlock. If all the terms are right and they fit together the right way, the conclusion is a deadlock certainty. But we have trouble dealing with abstractions like what is love? What is virtue? What is romance? What is the good life? Well, you can use dialectic where two people of goodwill ask each other. If you do it strictly, you ask each other these splitting questions, these yes or no questions that cause us to choose and take sides between polar opposites. We can't necessarily prove our truth claim, but we can exclude huge realms of ideas and things from what the truth may be. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you buy that?
Yeah.
So if you and I are doing dialectic, and I say, how was your day today, Karl?
Are you asking me?
Why, yes.
So far, so good.
Good.
Midway through a second podcast, but pretty good.
Good. What has made that good?
Intellectual activity.
So intellectual activity makes your day good?
Yes, and we could figure out, is it the only thing that makes it good?
Well, if you all along at every juncture in our little investigation said it depends. Now, we can often say it depends when we're asked a question, but as long as we're eventually able to get to the conditions it depends upon, right? Because sometimes the answers to question do swing on variables. But if you're a relativist and it depends all the way down, we can't have a seminar. And I'm not saying we can't have a seminar because we're not friends. Dialectic won't work if you don't believe that there's an absolute truth that is not dependent on your emotional state, whatever, right?
Yeah.
You have to believe in a capital T truth. We don't have to agree on what it is, but you have to believe it's there. And you and me have to be cohorts in the search for whatever that is.
Yeah, you have to believe that there is capital T truth. You don't have to believe that anybody's got it.
Right.
It might just be a regulative ideal for you.
Yeah, it's like the X-Files. The truth is out there. We don't have to, nobody needs to know what it is, but we just have to all agree that it's out there.
Mm-hmm. So if you go into a seminar and say, well, I think happiness is whatever you make it to be. Well, then happiness doesn't have any meaning, and we can't really discuss it.
Right.
So those seminars don't go very well. And then it would just become like a knitting club or something where you just talk about whatever you want to talk about with no expectation that the conversation is going to tend anywhere.
You just chase your tail. And by the way, if you say, hey, there's no such thing as truth, I mean, this is just logic 101. You've just made a truth claim, so there's such a thing as truth.
Yep.
So we can't do that.
Yeah, you can't consistently say what I mean is you can't say without self-contradiction that there is no such thing as truth.
And if you said happiness is what you make it, what'd you say?
Happiness is something like that. Happiness is whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. Well, I think that with a non-relativist person who believes in a capital T truth could actually say that in a seminar. And through careful questioning, we might find that person has a stoic outlook on life and believes that happiness is a state internal to the person that they actually have control over, right? Rational control over, and is actually a choice in a way of being, let's say. That's not relativist.
Yeah, but that's a great example. So if somebody comes into a seminar and says something like that, especially if it's one of the older seminars that have been around for a while, I don't mean older as in age, but a more mature seminar that we've had that's been around for 3 years. As soon as somebody says something like that, it's great because I don't have to do anything.
They get attacked.
I can be lazy. But somebody will make a claim like that, and then everyone else says, well, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Rather than, you're an idiot, that's wrong. What do you mean? Can you flesh that out? Can you say it in a different way? And the whole point of that is to find the truth in the statement that this person who is our friend has said. Mm-hmm. There's something that's true. Aristotle says, well, he says it about the multitude, but what the multitude thinks, it can't be completely wrong, or they wouldn't say it. Mm-hmm. So, well, let's find out what's the core of truth in there.
So people will make claims like, well, happiness is what you make of it. And then some questioning gets to some deeper truth about what they think the state of the soul is and people's ability to choose in their way of being. And, I don't know, right? But there can be something more behind it. But sometimes they're just like, oh, well, what's happiness anyway? I mean, it just gets really slippery. And the seminar comes to a halt. And we just can't have it. So you have to believe there's such a thing as a capital T truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Do skeptics have seminars?
Not good ones. You know what else I think needs to be in there?
What's that?
I think we need to put something in there that says seminar requires a belief that holds that truth is accessible through our rationality.
Sure. Otherwise, what's the point?
Well, there's some stuff out there that doesn't necessarily agree with that. There's some stuff out there that says, well, you need a purple person and a cat and a brown person and then a pink person.
Oh, I see. Yeah. See, in order to argue against having politics in the seminar, I need to mention politics. And
this ain't seminar. You're in luck.
Right. So identity politics is poisonous to what we're doing. Speaking as a middle-aged person of European descent, who cares what I am? Okay, speaking as a Pacific Islander from
a Pacific Island.
Yeah. So when you add that little phrase describing your position in the social hierarchy, then we're not talking about truth anymore, because I'm supposed to pay attention to what you say because of who you are.
Right. Is the truth accessible to all people through their rationality, or does it require a special cake mix of identities to access? No. It's accessible to all people. All people of goodwill who seek the truth and have rationality, I think, have the antenna necessary to get it. Early on, well, not really early on, about a year and a half into running this program, in Slack, a gentleman was writing some comments about Euripides' play Medea. And a lady who was a member, I can't remember exactly how it went, but she said, well, you can't speak to that. You're a man. You can't have a seminar if there are things that certain people cannot make observations about and then share the contents of their mind about. Like, you can't really do anything if that's the case. So you can't have a seminar if you hold that kind of a view. So if you're going to be rational and you're going to be honest, I think you can have a seminar. And by the way, my line there about in order to have seminar, we must believe that the truth is acceptable through our rationality doesn't just, it's not just about keeping identity politics out or critical race theory out. It's not just about that. Dialectic in seminar requires that.
Yeah.
So, there's a whole lot baked in there, that you're going to use your rationality and that language maps onto universals and that we can convey thoughts to each other, and, so on. But we require that. And it's not, wait a minute. No, we don't require that. Good seminars that use dialectic require it. It actually has nothing to do with me.
Yeah. And if you're going to join us, then, it's not that we're requiring it. If you're going to join us, then if you don't believe these things, you're not going to have a good time.
Well, actually, I do require it, Karl. Not because I'm being mean. There are other people in the seminar that are there to have a good seminar experience, to learn about themselves, to learn about these ideas. And if you deny their thoughts and ideas because of who they are, if you don't think they have access to the truth, because there is no such thing as a truth, if you don't think that their rationality and faculties map onto reality and that has some bearing on these ideas, then you end up torpedoing the thing for these other people.
Yep.
Hey, and you know what? You might even be right.
You're not.
But you might even be right, but we can't have seminar with that stuff.
Yeah. I've given you this quote a few times from Thomas Aquinas at the beginning of the Summa contra Gentiles, the other Summa. It's the one that is written strictly from reason. He says, since I'm writing this book for people who do not share our scriptures, I can't use them. So what we will do, we will appeal to human reason to which all must give assent.
It's a big ask.
It's kind of hopeful, but that's what we're a hopeful group of people here at OGB. You have a reason, you have human reason that has some possibility of encountering the truth, and that you can use it to figure it out. And furthermore, that it's probably going to work best in a group. And that's why we have them. So it's not a book club. It's a seminar club.
Yeah. Seminar club. I like that. Yeah. So this isn't an ad for us. Yeah, it is. But it's not solely that. If you're going to do one of these groups at home, or maybe you already are, I think these are some ideas or some ground rules that maybe you should think about and talk about with your fellow seminarians, and maybe adopt, or change them, massage them, tweak it up, whatever. But having these kinds of boundaries and ground rules has been a great help to us.
I'm pleased with the way it works. I just did a seminar 2 nights ago. Oh, yeah, it was about Aeschylus. It was so much fun just to let them talk about it, and they were going off in directions that I didn't usually go. Somebody was comparing Prometheus to Job.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Which kind of works and kind of doesn't, and so we were teasing out where it works and where it doesn't. Mm-hmm. It was so much fun, which is a part of this. This experience is fun. If you are a human with a mind that works, your mind is begging to work. It wants to do something. Well, you can give it something to do. Or you can doom scroll through the internet and feed it gossip and rumors and Yeah. My dream, I don't know if we're going to do this. I think we should, though. I want to have a house with a Faraday cage.
Yeah, I know.
And all the gadgets go in there. And if you need to use the internet, you have to go into that room. And maybe you need the key, like the nuns used to have in the grade school for the bathroom. And it'd be the key on this big plunger or something, or this big piece of wood you'd have to drag with you so you couldn't steal it. So I need the key to the internet. Oh, okay. And then you would go in there. And then you could doom scroll, and then you could do all that bad stuff. You know what doom scrolling is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you go on Instagram and you just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. I'm going to keep name dropping. Augustine calls curiosity a vice. It's a sin. And he's a church father with a big brain, so he might be right. Well, why would it be a sin? Don't you want to seek knowledge? Are you saying, Karl, that seeking knowledge is not good? No. Obviously, because we seek knowledge in seminars. What I'm saying is seeking novelty and distraction is not good. Seeking outrage, and it's not good.
Yes, I agree with that. But I also think, and I think I recognize this in myself, that this curiosity can have a covetousness in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You always want more.
It can lead to actual covetousness. You find out that you want things that you didn't even know you wanted until you saw it. Mm-hmm. I think you're safer with Aristotle, honestly. Mm-hmm. He's not selling you anything.
Aristotle, Socrates, and Aristotle, and later Aquinas, and others, but those are the big three for me, teach us to think from a priori, from the ground up, based on things that are accessible to everybody with the tools that are accessible to everybody. So what happens in seminar specifically doesn't really matter. What matters is that you do the thing and you get in the habit of thinking from the a priori, using your rationality to draw conclusions. And we practice that in seminar.
Mm-hmm. I'll say there was a conversation one of my kids was having with a young man at church, and they were talking about media and journalism and news. And I just popped my head in and I said, what counts as news? So they were having an interesting discussion, but they were talking about things about like journalism and news. Well, what's journalism? What's news? What's the point of news?
Socrates is such a jerk.
He is. We have this word news that we think is a thing. Well, it's not. It's an hour's worth of stuff that pops up on your television that's packaged, Somebody's picked what's going to be in it.
That's not who we are, Karl. I'm like, who's this we, Lone Ranger? Like, what are you talking about?
Well, in the past.
Society. I'm like, what? Where's society? Point to it.
It's in my heart.
Yeah. So doing seminar so that you get in you've done it so much that your first instinct is always to say, well, what is that? Like, that's a good question. We got to figure out what news is first. Is what it's all about. Yeah. Oh, why didn't you give us context on the plays of Aeschylus? Shut up. That doesn't matter. It's the doing. It's the doing. You know, I did a question and answer thing on Telegram this morning about strength training, and people always have a lot of questions about programming, and rightly so. I get it, but it doesn't matter that much as long as you train regularly. If you train 2 to 4 times a week and you put a little more weight on the bar when you can, you're going to get really, really, really strong. And the details of how you put more weight on the bar really doesn't matter that much. I mean, it kind of does, but it damn sure doesn't. It actually doesn't matter at all if you don't train consistently. You're just messing around. It only matters once you string together, 6 months of unbroken training. You know, that's really it. Programming is window dressing at that point. And anyway, doing the seminar is what matters. It's not the text doesn't even really matter that much.
Shh! Don't tell people.
It doesn't really matter that much. You know, we try to pick texts that have the best ideas, that are presented in the best ways or the most interesting ways of all time, but you know, you can do it over the Jaber Crow. You could do it over Agatha Christie. I mean, it doesn't matter. The process, it's the doing.
It's a bit better with better books. It's better with better books. It's a 2-hour seminar, so you have to figure out what's going to happen. If it were a class, there's no way to do it. So I did a seminar on the first volume of Livy, Early History of Rome. Livy's a wonderful Roman historian. He's funny. He's a good writer. But that book's 450 pages.
Right.
Of small type. There was no way we could possibly cover the book in 2 hours. And if something is impossible, you shouldn't try to do it. So we don't. We talk about highlights. We talk about general themes. We talk about what's Livy's point in writing this book. Do you think he's being truthful? Are the Romans truthful when they talk about their history? What's the importance of their king? There's a legend that their king, their king was raised by wolves, Romulus and Remus, except that wolf might be Latin for prostitute, which Livy points out.
Right.
Well, what does it tell you about the character of Romans that they might think this about their divinized founding king? Well, all that's up for grabs, and people can bring up what they want. That these are thoughts that rise to my mind from reading the book. And I go talk about it to other people who have read the book. And we really don't know where it's going to go. But it's not going to be a class where you say, and in chapter 3, Livy talks about Numa Pompilius. It's not going to be that.
No.
That's boring.
That's Plutarch anyway. Yeah, our seminars, and your seminar, if you do them yourselves, they can't be exhaustive. Yeah, you could read Aristotle's Metaphysics every day for the rest of your life and never exhaust it. But so they're not meant to be exhausted. It's the doing. Doggone it. Karl, are there any intrinsically bad ideas?
Never getting a land war in Asia.
Now, that's a good idea about bad ideas.
It's the negation of a bad idea.
So maybe this is what I mean. Are there any ideas that are so awful that they should not be uttered?
No, I do not think so. If it's true, people ought to know about it. If there was a truth that if people knew it would be destructive of society, is that what you're saying? No,
but yes, and There are ideas that I think are absolutely 1,000% true, and I don't think are destructive for society, but you're not allowed to say. For example.
Well, in our seminars, you are.
Right. But I will give an example. I said that promiscuity was shameful on Instagram the other day, and a woman accused me of slut shaming. And I said, that's right, you're banned, slut. And I blocked her. Well, she says I shouldn't be able to say, she thinks I shouldn't be able to say that. That's an unutterable thing to say that promiscuity is shameful.
What I would have asked is...
Well, you're more generous than me.
If this were a seminar, is it true? Well, or let's go further back than this. Rather than, I would say, well, it's probably pretty clear what promiscuity is. We can probably define that pretty easily. Okay? What is shamefulness? Mm-hmm. Are there any actions which are shameful? Or none? If there are some, does this count as one that is? In other words, we're focusing not on yelling at each other for saying things that we don't want to hear. It might be that things that you like are shameful. Mm-hmm. It might be true.
It's true. It is true.
What are you saying?
Bush Light's shameful.
So, I mean, that was a bit of an Instagram fight. And
I was not generous in my response. I take full responsibility for that. But I don't believe that you should police people's speech or their ideas in that way. The way that lady attempted to police mine, because I don't think that any of these ideas are unutterable. And your approach is a healthy way, I think, to deal with that. If somebody says, "Oh, well, these sluts are shameful," it's you would then dig into like, well, what's shame? Where does it reside with the shamer or the shamee? Is there anything in fact that is shameful then if you deny this kind of shame? You would do an investigation, and we would end up knowing more about it when we got done.
Well, and what it might do, which is why I like this seminar, say you come in, gosh, everybody's got, at least I hope you do. I hope you have things that you believe very strongly are true. If you come into seminar and talk, party talking points, you probably won't convince anybody.
Boring.
Yeah, and it's boring. If you talk big picture stuff, two things might happen. The people you're talking to might be moved by the truth of your big picture stuff, or you might move when you see that some of your big picture stuff is unsupported. And so both of you move, hopefully closer to the truth, which is out there, rather than, I would say what happened on Instagram was probably heuristic rather than dialectic.
Yeah, and it's Instagram. Like, that's not where you do dialectic, and it wasn't one of our seminars, and, whatever. But that's an example,
Yeah, but heuristic is dialectic, the goal is the truth. Heuristic, the goal is victory.
Right.
So I'm going to squash you however I can squash you. And if I can use identity group politics to hit you over the head, I'm going to do it because the point is winning.
Right. That will never win with me.
I don't think that's the best way to go.
Clearly not.
So in conclusion, you should read Agatha Christie.
Not until you've read Aristotle. Yeah, so do you approve of those additions? One, Karl, let's do this right now. One,
sure.
That one, you must believe that there is such thing as an objective truth that is accessible to all.
Yes.
Two.
Well, potentially accessible to all.
Okay.
Well, you can write it how you like.
I like potentially. That's cool.
It does not require you to think that anybody in particular has it.
Right. Yeah. And the fact that no one hasn't doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And that this truth is accessible to all through their faculties and rationality.
Yeah. Potentially accessible. Not everybody's going to be able to get it.
Right. Yeah. Potentially is important there. my IQ is not high enough to access all of the truths that Aristotle is pointing at.
Well, whose is?
That guy was a lizard person. Was Aristotle one dude?
I wonder what he was like in personality.
Was he one person? You know, all these things that we have are supposedly lecture notes and you know, aren't actually his quote unquote writings. Do you think that what we have of Aristotle was, I believe that Aristotle was probably one person. Do you believe that these writings that we have that are attributed to Aristotle are the work of that, or are notes based on the work of that one person? Or do you think that these have been worked on over the years?
For the most part, yes, there are some bits and pieces in that big blue set that we have. We give you, or as part of your membership, you get the complete works of Aristotle, Oxford edition, which is 2 big blue books. There are some things in there that strike me as less Aristotle-ish.
Yeah.
On Marvelous Things Heard, you know, some of this seems like bar talk.
Right.
But substantively, it all sounds like the same person to me.
Yeah. What a monster that guy was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there's some stuff to think about, and whether you do seminar or not, I think that those kinds of rules are probably good to stick to in conversation with people you care about every day. Fortunately, I don't care about a lot of people in the specifics, so I don't have to apply that to people in my Instagram mentions.
Yeah, the internet.
It's a stupid thing. I wish I could just snap my fingers and make it go away.
Like Thanos.
Yeah, I would do that. I do.